Dr. Bart Rademacher. This is Prescription for Your Transformation, real people, real conversations, and real success. And as we reflect on our own personal lives, we all have a story. I mean, we're actually writing our own book or a movie, but you have to ask yourself, is this a blockbuster movie or is just a regular movie? The thing is that we actually have the choice to define, to describe, or to decide what that story is. And life is really based on the stories that we tell ourselves. And there's a tremendous guide out there, a good friend of mine, somebody I've known for quite some time, who's done extensive work and research over the last 2 decades to help you master your life, master change in your life, master transformation, but also to embark on what we all should think of, our own hero's journey. Stephen Twohig, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Bart. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you. And now we had a previous session, and I love what you're saying then, that, there's the medicine within us that we have to tap into. There's a genius within us that we have to tap into. But a lot of it gets confused because we're stuck with some stories.
Yes. And here's the thing. I believe it's all story. Like my own personal belief, I was doing some work with some deep psychedelic work with ayahuasca, and I remember waking up and going, wow, this is all a story. And then it was like, oh, it's all story. They used to call me Storytime Steve back in the day because I loved the way that metaphors of you go in and take these stories of the 3 Little Pigs, or these old fables, and they had all these messages in them, and they just dripped with wisdom, right? And so I could work with my clients, and I could tell them this story, and I help them load in these modalities, just kind of like package all these lessons in this story. And as I started to study, April 2000, I took an experiential hero's journey where I became very aware of the circuitry that we have in our body. If you go back and you search, there's not a story that you're going to find that doesn't have a very specific framework. And if you think about it, Bart, you've been told this story, your dad's been told this story, your dad's dad's dad, your dad's 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 dad, all the way back to the beginning of spoken word, probably before that. We've all been told this thing called story. And the reality is we don't think in time. We think in moments, but we store in story. Story form is how we make the mind is a $2 million software application that's meant to do one thing, that's to make you survive. And it does that by creating meaning. And the way it creates meaning is to take a total chaos and create a story to give yourself meaning. Right. And so as I started to understand, I remember going, wow, how is it that nobody is we're addicted to this thing called story? It's like everybody all around. I go Serbia, Australia, Canada, US, all over, it's all story. Well, and then I can remember sitting there, I was telling somebody a story, and their eyes started glassing over. And I thought, wow, are they listening to me? Are they? And what I found is there's this interesting thing called narrative transportation. And what narrative transportation states is, have you ever noticed that when you're telling a story, and when somebody's telling you a story, you get sucked into the story?
Right, yeah.
It's naturally wired in our bodies for us. Our minds are wired for stories so they can be wired by story. Right. And so I started deep in it, really getting into this, and then became aware of the hero's journey. And as I continued to develop, I realized that this hero's journey is something that we're on now. We're on a hero's journey now, layer after layer, hero journey after hero's journey. We're constantly looking for what Joseph Campbell calls the fiery sword. And so I developed some material around that to allow us to really uncover who we really are. Like you said, that personal genius, right?
Right. I guess, how what I'm hearing from you today as well is that, we are creatures of meaning. And so we have to create, one of your words is construct. We have to create a construct of a life. And so we need all these different reference points, and all these different reference points now becomes that story. So for us to function well, we need a certain degree of certainty that, by doing this in this context, we're going to get the result that we want. Because ultimately, I think it was Malcolm Maltz who said, we're teleological beings. And in fact, go way back to the Greeks, and they understood that we are teleological, so we're goal oriented. And so for us to reach our goal, for us to have meaning in life, to be worthy of something, then we have to have these constructs. And so I guess these constructs are basically stories. The question is, do they serve us or do they don't? And so how do we get to choose?
Well, that's the thing is that most of us don't choose consciously, right? We get up and as children, we go to our table and our parents tell us what's right and wrong. And shoot, parents were from the 50s and the 60s, and just COVID in and of itself, the story that I may have been told last year is invalid today. It won't work today, right? So if I don't consciously go back in and look at what's true for me as a soul, as a human, as a as a Stephen, I believe we are spiritual beings. I'm a spiritual being having a Stephen experience, right?
Right.
And so if I don't go in and look at what is the story that Stephen is living out of, and does that story serve him? And this is time and time again, like I just keep coming to this same awareness, the same lesson that the universe keeps teaching me, no matter who I'm working with. If I don't choose the story consciously, the story, you either drive your story, you either tell your story, or your story will tell you. It's kind of like you either wag the dog, sometimes the dog wags the tail, and sometimes
Right.
the tail wags the dog.
Right.
Right. Most people, the tail is wagging the dog's not wagging the tail.
Right. So interesting point, because there's that formula that you well know, and listening, hopefully you'll understand that it's the cause and effect. And so most of the world is really at the other side of the equation, at the effect of the world around them. So basically what you're saying is, we have to decide that, life is happening for us, not to us. We have to decide, look, I'm going to be in the driver's seat. I'm not going to let somebody else decide that for me. And so do you have any systems or processes or sort of guidance for people to take that proactiveness, right? Because I'm sure some people are fearful, or what is it? They just don't know.
Yeah, and I do a thing. I do a thing called the Hero's Journey. I've done it online for, geez, I don't know, 6, 7 years, something like that. And it just keeps getting updated, and where we guide you through this process of uncovering your true hero, your true who your what I call your genius, right? That part of you that's, have you ever you ever walked out of a room and went, man, I can't believe I showed up the way, like, man, I was in flow, I was in this, I was in
Right,
that,
right,
right? And uncovering that, I guess what I was working with a group of people. I don't workshop in Georgia, and we were doing the hero's journey, and the hero's journey, there's a descent where you go into the pits of what Joseph Campbell calls the wasteland. I call it your personal hell. And then you come up, and that piece of bringing them up, doing the work where you're uncovering those deeper parts, that can be work. And we came in, it was after it, and there was a group of senior staff that were sitting around the circle, and I come walking in, and this gentleman, his name was Jim. And Jim was sitting there, and he's got bright red hair, right? Just bright
right.
red. And he's a surgeon. I mean, this guy's a genius, just the most loving. He's always smiling, always. You ever meet those people that are always happy,
Yeah.
right? And I remember one guy told him, he said, Jim, your hair is so red, you look like Howdy Doody. He's like, yeah, man, my hair is on fire because I'm so passionate about what I'm doing, and I'm so passionate about getting help. Da, 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 da. And this other person said something like, you got the goofiest smile. I said, oh, you should see my daughter laugh whenever I smile. Whenever I smile, it just lights her up. And I saw that, and I was watching, guys, we like to give each other crap, right? I said, hang on a minute, guys. And everybody stopped and looked up, and I said, Jim, are you aware these guys are giving you a hard time? And he said, oh yeah, I'm completely aware of that. I said, I've noticed that when you swallow their idea, they're what they're telling you, when you take it in, you're shifting it. He said, oh yeah. I said, how long have you been doing that? He said, oh, I've been doing it for years. I said, what's that about? He said, I made a decision a long time ago to not believe a story that doesn't empower me. And what I found out, went through working with literally tens of thousands of people, is that we all tell ourselves stories all day long. Now, I was working with an addict, and I realized, you're just looking for the negative. There's no way for me to give you positive intent here. You're just looking for the negative story. My belief system is, Brad, if you're going to tell yourself a story, tell yourself a story worth telling. And so, if you're just sitting there watching this video now, ask yourself, sit back and go, okay, what are the stories that I've told myself today? Was I the villain? Was I the hero? Was I the victim? What was the role? What was the character that I played? And if you're struggling with that, let's run you through the hero's journey. Let's start there and see if we can uncover some deeper, real truth about you. Because the truth is we're all geniuses.
I keep on hearing over and over again, that in one form or another, many people are wired that life should be easy. Life should be given to them. And so they kind of abdicate this responsibility that they're responsible for their own lives. I mean, when you think about it, and I did a lecture, way back when in Ecuador a couple of years back, and I was kind of sort of figuring out, how do I present? And I started off by saying, look, we live in an intelligent universe. Nothing happens by random. And so in essence, everything that we are in this very moment, is because of all the decisions, all the experiences, all the emotions that we've experienced to this time and the story. And so if anybody listening here, it's your fault. You're listening to us right now, right? And so,
Right.
so what confuses me, if you will, is how people are just abdicating that responsibility to do exactly what you're saying, is making that decision as to what this is all about. And this Jim guy, I mean, making that decision to say, look, I'm only going to take in the stories that empower me. That's powerful. I think we all need to do that.
Oh yeah. I mean, I was in Serbia, and I was working with the top gynecologist in the country. Like this lady was something else. And she was telling me, she stood up, we were doing a business training because, I've worked with, through my work with Tony, I've just had some amazing work with businesses. And I was working with her, and she said the problem was her industry was just, that Serbia is going through this modernization, and it's extremely
Right,
corrupt. Like here in the United States, we know it's corrupt, but it's
right,
underneath the water. In
right,
Serbia, it's right out in the open. Like everybody knows, like people just disappear, stuff like that. I mean, and so, she said the problem is that my my industry is growing, and because it's growing and it's so corrupt, people are dying. I said, what are you going to do? I don't know what to do. What do you mean you don't know what to do? You know what to do. And I'm I'm working with her, and I had this big crowd around me, and she said, I just don't know what to do. And so we went into, for her, what it was about again, her abdicating her authorship. I just don't know what to do. And so we went in and we looked at it, and we pulled out the story, and we strangled it, and we stripped it out, and she started loaded different stories. And I mean, we're in Serbia, they like to eat, like which is good for me, right? But they like to eat, right? And so we're at the end of the event, and she's one of the VIPs, and we're eating this dinner, this amazing dinner that they'd made. And she pulls me aside. She's just excited. She can't stop shaking. She's like, oh, she said, I got this guy that's right across the street from me. She said, and he's always coming to me, and they're asking me questions. She said, because I asked her, I said, why don't we scale your business, bring people underneath you? She said, there's nobody that can do what I do. I said,
right.
nobody can do what you do. Not one person, 8 billion people on the planet. You can't, not one person. No, not one person. So we did the work, right? And she's like, oh, this guy right across the hall, and he's always asking me, I think it would be great. Oh, and this lady that I helped when she was going through school, she called me. She's ready to come out of school. I think she'd be awesome. I'm just looking at her dumbfounded. I'm like, I think her name was Masha. I said, Masha, hold on a minute. I said, what happened? Where were all these people 10 seconds ago? Like when we were back
Right,
here,
right, right.
she said, I just couldn't see it. I just couldn't see him because she was so wrapped up in her story that nobody can do what I do, that there's nobody here that will help me, that I am a victim, that she could not see because her story would not allow her
Right.
the ability to see the resources that were literally right in front of her. I was just blown away. It's like she was, and she boom, took off, and it was a whole nother, doing all this work and amazing. I come back the next year, she's doing all this amazing work, and so it's all story. It's all story. Like tell yourself a different. You want to change your life? Tell yourself a different story. The only thing keeping you, Tony, my mentor Tony, he always used to say, the only thing keeping you from getting what you want is the story that you're telling yourself about why you
Mhm.
can't have it.
Right. Yeah, and like like our mentor tells us, it's a state, story, and strategy. And I know we're going to be talking about strategy in our next session.
Yeah.
But I think that's brilliant in understanding that, what is that signal? And I love what Byron Katie says. pain is basically the signal for us to do some work. And another one that she says, if I argue with reality, I but lose, all the time. And then take a quote from Nietzsche, which is amore fati, love what is. And so what I'm getting to, Stephen, is exactly, whatever conflict is within us, we have to then use that as a signal to ask ourselves, what's that story that we need to be, reevaluating, reassessing, or changing. So I want to thank you for today. And how do people find you? Because I know you got some brilliant work out there, brilliant programs, brilliant websites, mastermind groups, you're a guide. How do people find you?
You can find me. Mastering Change is the primary site that I've got up right now. You can find me on Facebook. I spend a lot of time on Facebook, probably a little too much to be completely honest. But you can find me on Facebook. And then again, from a hero's journey perspective, welcome to thejourney.com will be the primary. You can go in. It's a 2 hour. It's a 2 hour what I call a single stream of consciousness. So I've taken and I've curated, or I've borrowed, or I've done whatever. Taken some movies, because movies are our primary. Are the primary myths that we're using. It's ways of telling myth right now. And I've curated this 2 hour journey where we will go in and we will dig in and we will find that hero inside you. And I don't teach you anything in that. You don't even have to say anything if you don't
Right.
want to. It's just allowing yourself to be swept up, and that narrative transportation will take over, and you'll uncover them deeper parts. And we'll look at the shadow, that villain, that part of you. You ever do something and you go, why did I do that? Right? We're going to unlook at that as well, and then we'll develop a plan, a journey, and typically that's going to be mind blowing for most people.
Yeah, I love it. And give it a different context too. From Greek, the term hero means protector of two. And so by you becoming that best version of yourself, by overcoming those challenges and obstacles that are in your way, then you become that better person to serve others as well. And again, reach out to Stephen Twohig, mastering change, wanting your transformation. And I look forward to you once again opening up the doors for in-person transformation. I think that's going to be
Oh,
absolutely
I can't wait. Yeah, if you're interested in doing some deep work, I love. There's nothing. It's kind of like learning how to swim, right? You can read all the books you want, but until you get thrown into the water, my uncle put me out on a boat in a lake and just threw me out in the water. That's how I learned I could swim, right?
well.
So those deep personal work will allow that face to face.
Yeah, I got a story on that one, but we'll keep that for next time. I'm Dr.
Okay.
Bart Rademaker, prescription for your transformation. Real people, real conversations, and real success, bringing to you the brilliant insights, the geniuses around the world. And I love this genius, Stephen Twohig, a guide for you to make the changes you want in life. I'll be back.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Dr. Rademaker's Prescription for Your Transformation. Continue the path towards discovering your own authentic genius by tuning in next time for more real conversations with real people.
Rademaker, and this is Prescription for Your Transformation. Real people, real conversations, real success, tapping into your authentic genius so that you can live the life that you desire. And so one of the coolest things that I get to do, I get to talk and learn and transform my life. These brilliant guides on this planet. And one of them is Stephen Twohig. Been talking, for quite some time already. Got a couple of sessions before about the story that you like to tell yourself and the medicine within us. But there's something that's critically important, and he brings this in all of his work for your mastering change for you, and that's, who are you? What's your identity? And if you go back to the Greek temples, one of the in the temple of Apollo, on one of them is the know thyself, and there's a couple of other ones. There's two other ones, maxims. One is I can't remember what they are. But the point is this, is that the term identity from the Greek means, what we repeatedly do. So what are your habits? And one of our mentors, Tony Robbins, talks about, show me your habits, then I will show you your destiny. And so in essence, when we look at it from the perspective of systems, we're constantly running a system. So depending on what system you're running, you're going to get to your destiny that you want, right? Or the one that you don't want. And so whatever you do, you're going to get to your destiny. The question is, which one is it? And so we actually have a power of choice to consistently decide what it is that we're going to become and where we're going to go based on the systems. But you need a smart guy and a smart guide like Stephen to help you develop the systems that will create that for you. Stephen, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Bart. I love being here. Your podcast rocks.
No, thank you. Well, it's because of a person like you that gets to be part of it. So, the honor is totally mine. So tell me, the power systems. I mean, I know you've brought this into the context of all the work that you do, and you've been, supporting and guiding people for the last 20 years. You've done tremendous work in the past. And so where do the systems fit in?
Well, I picked this up from working under Tony. He commissioned me to interview literally tens of thousands of businesses from around the world, from your multi-billion to your one-man army to literally, I talked to a pickle farmer. I didn't even know that was a thing, right? And, it's the systems and the strategy, as Tony's always used to say, story, strategy, state, right? Story, we've discussed, state, if you're not in the right state, if you don't have the right energetics, you're never going to get there. But strategy, a lot of people don't implement and engage a system that will allow them to get there. And it's funny, and then you end up just reinventing the wheel over and over and over,
Right.
Whether it be in your personal life or in your business life, just over and over and over. It's like waking up and going, okay, well, how am I going to make it through this mess? Well, do you have a strategy? No, I didn't even know that was a thing.
Right.
You develop a strategy, and now we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can get through something with a systemized way that we know is going to give a very specific outcome. It allows us to anticipate. It allows us to report. What gets reported gets measured. What gets measured gets managed. What gets managed
Right.
grows. But if you don't have a system,
Right.
then you have you're reporting, but you don't know what you're reporting on. Right. And so you have to have that system in place to go, okay, this is what I'm doing. It's not working. How much is it not working? Well, it's not working by this much. Okay, well then let's adjust this part of the system. Oh, well, that bumped me up by this much. Okay, great. Well, now let's adjust this. And you can systematically tune in both your life and your business in ways that allow you to radically transform and turn decades into days, really.
So what are the systems that you use?
Well, it depends. So I have if I'm working with individuals, I have what I call the 6 influence points. So we can go down the system, and what I do is I take NLP, I took all the technologies and I wrapped them into, instead of me working with all the technologies and studying technologies, which I spent 2 decades doing, I want to work on the computer itself. I come from Gateway originally, in a previous life. Yeah, I was a tech support, advanced tech support. I was there for the destination system way back in the day.
And my first computer.
Well, it was one of the top, at one point, one of the top brands. And what I realized is we're all running this computer. Well, we're learning these different softwares, these different ways to defrag, stuff like that. Why don't we learn how the computer works first? And so the 6 influence points allows us to go, whether you're a whether you're working on yourself, whether you're trying to influence somebody to do something, be it sales, be it a coach, be it a therapist, be it no matter what, the 6 influence points allows you to understand how the mind adjusts and makes decisions, and you can learn how to make adjustments based on that. And then in business, I have the 6 pillars of business where, taking and understanding that as a business owner, we've got to have these set ways of looking at things, because as a business owner, one of the most important things you'll do is make sure you have the right gauges in front of you.
Right.
If you don't have the right gauges in front of you, you'll never know, oh, I'm running out of gas. Oh, I'm moving too fast. My RPMs are too high. If you don't have the right gauges in front of you, you're looking at different things. You don't have the right system in place, then there's no way for you as a business owner to make sure that you're covering all the bases.
So one of the things that you mentioned already, which is key, unless you're measuring it, and you're not going to manage it, and whatever you're not managing, you're not going to grow. And so do you have a particular system that helps people remain engaged in that? And I'll give you my own example, what I constantly do. And I've tried all sorts of different systems, and the RPM system and everything else. But I developed my own in so far as I just created an Excel spreadsheet. And on that Excel spreadsheet, I've got my different quadrants of different things. So one quadrant has my outcomes. One quadrant is my experiences. One quadrant is my reasons. And I have a bunch of other things too, because at least this way, every single day I'm sitting down, engaged, in what the plan of that day is going to be like and what I need to measure. And for example, I have to do my exercises. I have to do my exercises if I want to be healthy, right? And so sometimes I forget to mark them down, and then I get so caught up in the day that I don't do my exercise. So what do you have any particular tools that you support people with to measure that, monitor, manage it?
I do it. I have what's called an identity blueprint. So identity drives narrative, narrative drives story, story drives belief, belief drives emotion, emotion drives decisions, right? Okay. Those are the 6 influence points. And so you take those out and you map those out. And every day you can go in and you can look at, this is where I'm showing up. This is how I'm showing up today. Right. And these are the decisions that I'm making out of that. And you can then go back and review almost like a book, right? You can, interestingly enough, just like a really good story, right? We can go back and we can look at, did I show up? Did I become, am I showing up as I want to show up, or am I allowing what we call situational identity, where I'm allowing the outside world, like you said, I get too busy.
Right.
Oh, so you're allowing the outside world to dictate who you are. No, I just got busy. Did you really get busy, or did you allow one thing to become more important than another? Or did you overwhelm yourself so you could give yourself permission to be overwhelmed?
Right.
Right.
So I guess what you're telling me now is, and I totally am on board with this, is you're committing to a certain level of accountability. You start off your day by saying, look, this is my identity. This is who I choose to be. These are my intentions. And I guess that, probably what you do in the morning is priming. And at the end of the day, you do kind of your check-in. It's not like, well, you're busy, and then, okay, now I'll go to sleep.
Yeah. So we've got, one of the things I do is I run a mastermind group on Fridays for my church and other people. It's a mental cleanse group. So we have a 4-week process where we clear out the chatter, because we build up plaque in our heads, right? And so we were checking in, and what I've come to realize is that this isn't something, it's not about taking accountability. It's about being conscious about what, because you're doing this now. You're taking on an identity now. You're making up stories now. You're making, these are things, people, when people are working, they understand, oh, I need to take accountability. No, you just need to do it consciously. It's like, you're doing this stuff now. You're just not being conscious about it. Why not, if you're going to write a story, why not grab the pen and go, okay, what's the story I'm going to write today? As opposed to just scribbling on a piece of paper. Right. Most people in their lives are just a walk-on. They're going to spend their life, they're going to wake up, they're going to wake up down the road, and they're going to not know what hit them. Like, I didn't even know that I was running. This whole time I was running the bus, and I didn't know I was running the bus. Yeah, the whole time you were in charge of it. Oh man, my wife is a hospice nurse. And so she and she's not just a hospice nurse. I call her the angel of death. Like she's the angel that you hope shows up when you're dying, right? To take care of you with dignity. And she comes home and you know, the number one story that I hear time and time again is people holding on longer than they should because they have unresolved issues, that they haven't cleaned this up, that they haven't cleaned. So they did something unconsciously and now they regret doing it. And so regret is literally, it will keep you in pain and suffering so long. So if you're gonna do something, just be conscious about it. And when you're conscious, then at least then, even if it doesn't turn out the way I want, at least I can say, I hit that thing consciously as me, and this was the result, and now I can make adjustments.
So I love that distinction. So it's basically saying this, is that I'm consciously choosing this to get this kind of outcome. If I don't get this outcome, then I need to make a different conscious choice. So
I need to go in and adjust my strategy,
right,
and see, you know, people freak out about failure. Well,
right,
of all the successful people I've worked with from all around the planet, if there's one thing I know, you're going to fail more than you're going to succeed. So it's swallow failure as just a sign for me to say, well, that didn't work. Like I did a lot of work studying Edison, and because you know Edison and Tesla, I did a lot of work in Serbia, so really understanding. And Edison would go, you know, if something would explode, and he'd go, man, write that down, like write that down. And he was so excited about failure that it caused him to continue to drive forward. So accepting that failure is part of the process, it's just a guide point to tell us that we didn't get there, then making adjustments.
right.
Making adjustments until you hit your mark. And eventually, if you're consistent and you're persistent about chasing your goal and you're willing to do whatever it takes, and here's the thing, when people say whatever, I'll do whatever it takes. Really? Will you allow yourself to fail over and over and over again? Will you allow yourself to strip away those parts of you? Like most people, when they say that, they want to meet it, but they're not being conscious. And here's, again, they're doing all the stuff I do. You're doing this now. Like it's stuff you're doing now. Why not do it in a way that works as opposed to a way that keeps you constricted?
You know, it's interesting you say that because in the realm of medicine, we can't fail because failure can be kind of disastrous. And so I struggled with that for the longest period of time until one day I realized that failure was my friend. And I love this quote, and I got super excited when I heard this quote from Peter Diamandis in his book, Bold, you know, of the exponential entrepreneur. And their mantra basically is fail often, fail quickly, and fail forward.
Yes.
And so all of that is a lesson. And I think Ray Dalio talks about his post-failure high because he spirals upwards through failure. And and you're absolutely right. And so that's where what I want to share when it comes to being, like you like to say, conscious, but also have compassion for yourself. I mean, love who you are, give yourself permission to be human, to make mistakes, and that's part of the learning process.
Yeah, and you hit something on the head that I am, you know, because I'm doing my work. I'm not, as a guide, I'm not a coach, I'm more of a guide.
Right.
I'm doing my work as well, and as I'm doing my work, what I've realized is, you know, the hardest thing for me to do is to love myself. And I think love is like water. I think that it's a necessary thing, but you know, how do I take love?
Right.
How do I do that with love? How do I take in? And what most people do with failure, Bart, is they do the exact opposite. They go, "Oh, I didn't get it," and they go, "Oh," and they drink something different. Right? They drink something, they drink why does this validate that I'm a failure? How does this validate all these other stories that are going on about who I really am? And use failure as a tool to validate why they're not, you know, we all have two fears, one that we're not good enough, two that we're not going to be loved. And so it's like, oh, I failed. Well, see, told you, you weren't good enough. You're not good enough. You should probably give it up. And then what we're doing is we fight against ourselves. We spend so much energy fighting against ourselves that we never have the energy necessary to achieve the goal. And anything worth doing is worth sucking at. So if you're not willing to fail through it, I talk to people, coaches, thousands of coaches that I've worked with.
Right.
You know, are you doing any Facebook posts? Are you doing any Facebook videos? They're like, you've been doing this for what, 5-6 years now? I mean, you've been doing this for a while. I get on the phone with them. I go, are you doing any Facebook lives? Oh no, I could never. why? I don't know how. Well, you turn on your camera and you start talking, and then you make one really, really crappy video, and you go, okay, well, what was good about that, and what could I learn from
Right.
that? And then you make another, and then another, and then another, and then 10,000 videos down the road, you're a genius at this, and you're doing
Right.
things unconsciously that are brilliant that other people are looking at you going, I could never do that. And now it's like you see the journey. There's a journey you have to take. I can't stay who I am and unfold who I'm truly meant to be. You can't stay here and get there. You're gonna have to work. And typically that means you got to be willing to suck at something.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's better to suck it than skip it.
That's great. Yes, it's better to suck at it because you can't go from this stage to you can't go from one of the archetypes I believe that we all carry is the master archetype. It's that
Right.
it's the need for growth. It's the need to continue
Mhm.
to evolve. And so we have this master archetype in us, and you can't get from here to here without going. You can't skip a step because if I always say never let your talent take you where your character can't keep you. Right? You people get down the road and they didn't cover all them steps, and then
Yeah.
you see them, they fall back,
Yeah.
and it's because you didn't cover the steps. You leapfrog past 5 steps. You should have taken those 5 steps first. And it's part of the work I'm doing right.
I love it. So basically what you're sharing is you're helping people develop that foundation, and having that solid foundation, regardless of what's happening around you. You could be like that redhead that we talked about before. You shift your story and everything's great.
Yeah, well, and here's the thing, when I'm doing, like, we bring in 10 people and we run them through this deep work where we go in and we shift all 6 influence points. It's a major, like, life-changing experience. Like, you will leave changed, and not changed in a way that I'm going in and throwing
Right.
pixie dust on you, but consciously going in and go tweak, tweak, tweak. Oh man, that's exactly what I was looking to do. Well, yeah. And
Right.
you see these transformations that people make, and it's not a transformation based upon you need more information. Typically, we're drowning in information. We're starving for wisdom, right? You don't need more information. You don't need another book. That's good. It's important to continue to educate my mind and grow. I mean, just being around people like you, I'm just continually blown away by the way your mind works, right? But I got to continually
Right.
sharpen my sword. But it's more about, am I showing up consciously? Am I being who I need to be in this? Like, ask yourself right now, if you're watching this video right now, ask yourself, am I the brightest? Am I the boldest? Am I the most powerful version of myself? And if you aren't, ask yourself, what would happen if I just for today, just for an hour, just for 10 minutes, chose to show up as the highest version of myself?
Right.
Just for a minute, and wear it like a jacket. Let it be an experiment. We do
Right.
the mental cleanse. We call it an experiment because it
Right.
shifts everything. It shifts your narrative. It shifts your beliefs. It
Right.
shifts because you're cleaning out all the cobwebs that are in your mind, right?
That's awesome. So if people want more of this, how do they find you, Stephen?
They can find me Mastering Change, so www.masteringchange. I've got some stuff from a business standpoint at www.strategy.zone. And then from the hero's journey perspective, you also have me at welcometothejourney.com.
I love it. So this is what I'm going to summarize as conscious empowerment and conscious cleansing all at the same time, creating that transformation with you, because what's inside of you is what's going to make it happen. And always, 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 I encourage people, find a guide, find Stephen. They have so much experience to get dialed into, what's stopping you, what's preventing you, what's challenging you, help you reform, your model of the world by asking the right questions. But the cool thing is, it's your world. So I'm going to give you the last word, Stephen.
Well, it's your story, and if you're gonna buy into a story worth telling.
I love it. I'm Dr. Bart Rademacher, and this is Prescription for Your Transformation. Real people, real conversations, real success. Talking to the exemplars, the luminaries around the planet, like Stephen Twohig. I want to thank you again, and I'll be back.
Thank you, brother.